Welcome to Comedians After Hours with your hosts Willis and Vere.
Hello, I'm Adam Willis.
I'm George Vere.
And I'm Ian Coulter.
And welcome to Comedians After Hours. This is our fourth show at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in the Underbelly George Square. And today's guest is Paul Foot.
Paul, thank you for coming
Yes, Adam. Oh, thank you very much for saying that, Adam.
Paul is the only guest to have learnt our names.
I know all of you, Adam and George and Ian. I know you.
You learnt all three?
Yes, and I know your past. You used to live with him, and he used to live with you, and you used to live with him for 4 years.
We were chatting.
How do you know
And
this?
you know him from secondary school, and Ian knows Adam for 5 years, and
Very good.
then you live together.
This
and
is all true.
Yeah.
You're from Buckinghamshire.
Yes.
I've been doing my research too.
Yes, that's right.
So we're
Yeah.
so I'm just setting up a level playing field straight off the bat.
Oh,
So we know things about you.
do you?
Some things, yeah.
You're trying to flirt with me?
I'm not trying to flirt with you, Paul.
It's a bit strange, isn't it? Yes.
It's either like flirting or threatening.
Yeah,
It's a
I
bit
found it
threatening
very
as well.
threatening. I didn't find it at all sexual. I found it rather unpleasant.
I'll be honest. I think I was being defensive. I
Yeah.
don't know if I meant to be threatening, but I think if I did, I'm very sorry.
That was very sexual.
And is that better than threatening?
Yeah, I prefer. Well, I don't know. I prefer. At this stage of the evening, I prefer something in between the two. You know, something that could go either way, either to sexual or to fighting. But with you, Adam, I always get one spectrum or the other. I always get the aggressive side or the very sexual side, and I'm always confused by you because I never get the true side of you. I'm always confused by the two sides of you. But I love both sides. I feel like I'm in a love affair with both sides. With the sexual side, I'm in a relationship of relentless love. But with the aggressive side, I feel as if I'm in a dysfunctional relationship that you punch me in the face, but then I keep coming back for more. My self-esteem does not allow me, my low self-esteem does not allow me to tear myself away from the aggressive side of your personality. But then at the same time, my other side of my personality is strongly drawn to the sexual, the soft side. So I'm in a constant quandary with you, Adam, and for those reasons I wish to leave the podcast immediately.
You've opened me up like a book, and you've passed me around the audience.
How do you feel now?
Terrified, but also incredibly aroused.
Well, it's horrible. All right, great. Well, do you want to ask a question?
Yeah. What made you decide to do this show this year?
Well,
Not our show, your show.
Yeah.
I assume you mean.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
what you mean my show?
Yeah.
A poorly worded opening question.
There's a surprise.
Well, it was ambiguous, wasn't it? Well, the reason I decided to do my show was the same reason I've always performed in comedy field for the last 22 years. I couldn't think of any other options. There is a seriousness to that answer, because when I started doing comedy 22 years ago, no one liked my comedy very much. It was very unfashionable. But I kept going because I couldn't think of anything else to do. And I would write it in my book. I've got a comedy book in which I keep all my shows, and I write them all in, and I would always do a show. And then I would think, that didn't go very well. This was maybe like 1998 or something, and I'd have been in Leicester or somewhere. And I'd think, that didn't go very well. And then I'd think, I'll do one more, and then I'll give up. And I kept thinking, I'll do one more, then I'll give up. But I never, well, it was always one more. And eventually, after about 13 years, my luck changed. And then people started to like the humour, and then they started to come along especially to see the humour. And suddenly, I became overnight success. And anyway, so I just, that's what, I mean, but a serious answer to your question is that I did a show because that's what I do. That's the only thing I can think of to do. That's like my That's just what I do. I mean, I couldn't. If I wasn't a comedian, I don't know what I'd be. People sometimes say, "What would you do?" I don't know. I can't imagine being in the grown-up world and what sort of things I would do. Maybe work. I don't even know what. Sometimes people say, "Oh, this is my job. It's a senior management consultant," and I don't know what it means. I don't know. When people talk about jobs, what's it for? I don't understand why they're doing it. And so I don't understand what they're achieving by it. So I don't know what I would do. If I wasn't a comedian and I wasn't doing this show here, I don't know what I would do. I mean, I'm guessing. I'm just clutching at straws. So maybe working in a sweet corn factory, like stripping the sweet corn. That seems like quite a good job to do. You have to strip the sweet corn off the cob, get it into the can. Get it in the can. Don't overfill the can. Don't underfill it. Because if you underfill, obviously you get complaints that you've underfilled, and it's against the Trading Descriptions Act. You haven't given them enough corn, but if you put too much corn in, then you don't leave enough air in the tin. If you don't leave enough air in the tin, then if the tin gets warm, like if it goes to a warmer climate, it will explode with sweet corn-based death. So filling the sweet corn can to the right level is an extremely skilled job. That is why if I ever were to hang up my gloves as a comedian, I don't know why I'd hang up gloves, I don't wear them as a comedian, but if I were to hang up the gloves as a comedian, I would go into the sweet corn canning business. And so that's really where what I would do. And you are making very strong and unbroken eye contact with me, Adam, it making me also now very aroused.
That's exactly the answer I wanted.
Good.
We were once criticised for not interrupting a guest when we think they're going off onto a tangent, and I think how could we?
You interrupt me, you pay the price.
Right, Paul, I'm going to ask you a supplementary question. Something you
Yes,
said about 5 minutes ago.
Yeah. Yes.
You keep a book of every gig you've ever done. Is it detailed as to how the gigs went, or is it just a list of gigs?
It's just a list. The number of the gig. At the moment, it's on 4,500 and something. I can't remember exactly. It's the place of the gig and the date of the gig.
Mm-hmm.
And what I quite like about it is that I can look back at several years in the past and see a whole page of maybe about 120 gigs per page, and I can't remember any of them.
Oh, really?
I like that. It sort of adds to the sense that it's just all intangible. It's all I must have learnt from those gigs, but I can't remember them.
Mm-hmm.
I like that much more than remembering them all, which would be very depressing and dull. I like to not remember the past. I find the past very dull. I have no interest in the past. I'm only interested in what I'm doing now and the future and working on new comedy. I don't care about the past. I find it but boring.
So what's the point of the book?
The point of the book is that I like the book because I don't know any other comedian who's got a book like mine. I meet other comedians who maybe keep a record of their gigs from maybe about 40 and then they lose count. And I've met professional comedians who started, but they sort of started out and they couldn't quite remember the first few, and they started after maybe a couple of years or a few months or something. But mine is the only one where it lists every single gig I've ever done in my whole career. So it would be a bit silly to stop doing the book now, wouldn't it?
Yes.
So I keep the book, and it's something for those who love me to remember me by when I'm gone.
What categories of information do you keep in the book? So you keep the place you did it.
The place.
You keep notes.
He did say that.
The date.
Were you listening? He did say all that a minute ago.
Yes, that's right.
You can repeat it if you want, but I'd say don't repeat it because
it is a repeat question from Adam. But I like the repeat questions from Adam because I have a strong rapport with Adam, and I'm always happy to receive his questions.
Would you like to answer the question again then?
Well, Adam, there's no further details in the book. Yeah, it's just the name of the place and the date and the number. And another thing I like to do is to see what number of gig I'm on, and then I look back to when I was halfway through, and then think, what was I doing half the number of gigs through? For example, a number of milestones. For example, a few years ago, well, when I started off, my career was, well, I shouldn't really say it, but anyway, my career was very poorly organised. But anyway, some years ago, I met a new manager who managed my career very well. Anyway, and then about 2 years ago, it reached a milestone where more than half of my gigs have been under his auspices, as it were. So that was like a milestone. And another milestone that I'm coming up to is that when I look back at my gigs, I'm on about 4,600. And when I go back to about 2,300, then that was 10 years ago when I was in Los Angeles doing some television show there. And that's when I stopped being nervous. Because for the first 2008, so first 12 years of my career, I was very nervous with a lot of stage nerves. And not like normal stage nerves that sometimes people get a bit nervous, they go on stage, then they relax. Mine were much worse than that. I'd be nervous before I went on, then I'd get on stage, then I'd get worse. And then I'd get more and more nervous until I had to leave the stage. But anyway, when I was doing a show about 10 years ago, there were 15 million people watching on TV, and then that cured me of my nerves.
Oh, really? You've never been nervous since?
Never been nervous since.
Wow.
I
That's
read,
impressive.
I saw from that, apparently you don't feel a lot of adrenaline when you're on stage.
Oh, yes. Yes, I think that's true. I think, I think a lot of, I don't want to, certainly, I don't, I think a lot of comedians, I don't know what to say really, but I don't get nervous and I don't have a huge amount. I obviously have some adrenaline on stage, but not very much, I don't think. And after I come off stage, I'm quite calm. Like I know some comedians who will be all hyperactive all night and they've got to maybe go to a big party and they'll be like, oh my God. Whereas I'll be more like, Did
that throw you?
There was a noise happened.
Yes. What was that noise? Coke. Oh, someone said Coke.
A Coke?
Cocaine.
Oh, cocaine. Oh, I see. You're saying they would take cocaine after they come off the stage. Oh, insinuating, yeah. Well, I wouldn't have that. I've never had it. But anyway, I just come off the stage and then I might just sort of say, not too many mistakes tonight. And then I'll just go and have a sit down and maybe watch like an old episode of Bergerac. And just relax. But I don't have a lot of adrenaline. I'm just, when I do it, it's just like a technician doing it. And I love it, and then I go and do it, and then I finish doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I think from watching you perform,
We saw your show today.
yeah,
Oh,
which was fantastic, by the way.
oh, thank you.
From watching you perform, I find that really surprising because you're so physical.
Yes.
You move around so much and so quickly that I find it really difficult that you're just technically going from one point to one point. How rigorously do you plan that out?
Well, I wouldn't want to give too many tricks away, but what I would say is that with a comedian, one of the jobs of a comedian is to do the same thing over and over again, make it always look fresh. One of the jobs of a comedian is to take something that maybe they ad-libbed one time, it was a genuine ad-lib, and then recreate that ad-lib over and over again. But I would also say that I do secret shows, I call them, and they're for people on my secret connoisseurs, Guild of Connoisseurs email list, and I do shows for them where they come and I might do a whole show based on something, and I will just make the whole show up for 2.5 hours. So I'm quite capable of making things up for 2.5 hours. So I'll say I've got the ability to make things up for 2.5 hours, but I've also got the ability to recreate the same thing again. But I wouldn't want to give any more away because it would give away the tricks.
Do you take feedback from the secret performances, or do you just remember the bits you went that was good?
I make it. Well, the thing about improvisation is you can sometimes think, oh, that was good, and I'll recreate that again. But you have to know which bits not to recreate.
Mm.
You have to know which bits of improvisation just happened that night, and you never want to do it again because you would never be able to repeat it quite the same.
Yeah. Because I know from a lot of people improvising, they try and recreate the same thing and it just falls, it's just stagnant immediately. A lot of people don't have that.
That's a big, like, for example, when I did my first gig, which was on the 7th of February 1993 when I was at university, anyway, I just did it just to see what it was like. People say, oh, you should try comedy just one time, see what it's like. Anyway, when I did it, I'd never really watched any stand-up comedians before, so I didn't really know how it worked. I didn't understand that you basically tell jokes. I didn't really understand what it was. So when I came on, I didn't know what to say, so I just sort of said, can anyone name a fruit? And then people would name a fruit, and they would someone would say pineapple, and I'd say something about, oh, it's all bristly, and I've got a pineapple juice in. And then someone would say melon, and I'd say, oh, a melon. Anyway, the point is...
It still kills.
Yeah. But the point is, it all went really well, but I had no idea why it went well. And 4,500 gigs later, I'm still incapable of recreating it. So the point is, with improvisation, never try to recreate. But meanwhile, there was another comedian who started at the same time as me at university, and she used to go to this little place called the Comedy Cellar where you could do comedy. And this really I love this. Anyway, apparently her first ever show, it was her first ever gig. She'd never performed before. I didn't actually see it, but apparently it had gone really well, and everything she said just gelled. It was just... Anyway, she never managed to recreate that. That was the first gig, and she would always go on. Every 2 weeks was the show. Every 2 weeks she would try and go on and redo it, and it would always be a disaster. And then at the end, as everyone was leaving at the end of the Comedy Cellar open mic night, they'd all be going out, and then she would just always be sitting on the steps weeping because she didn't know how to recreate it. And then she tried that for the whole of the rest of her university career to recreate it, and she failed. And then in the end, she gave up, a broken woman. So the point is, you've got to laugh at stuff like that, and like, things like that. Things like that.
Is that what the moral is?
Is it what?
Is that what the moral is?
Well, I don't know what the moral is, but I love things. Like, for another example, I don't know what the moral is, but these things are very formative. These things have influenced what my comedy's like, because I think some of my comedy is a bit cruel and unpleasant sometimes in a sort of really silly way. Like when I was still at university, BBC Radio 5 Live got me on I came on Radio 5 Live, and then they said, and I did some comedy on there, and then they said, look, we're going to send you on a comedy course. It's at the Comedy Store. You're going to learn about comedy for the weekend. Then you come back next week and we'll see how you've got on, sort of thing. Anyway, so I went on the comedy course, and it was a good comedy course, actually. Where all the other people on the course, of course, were paying for the course. It was all paid for by the BBC sort of thing. Anyway, and there was this one chap who was, I must have been maybe 20 at the time, 21. And there was this chap who was maybe 18, and he was from anyway, it doesn't matter where he was from. He was from Scotland, but anyway, that's not relevant really. But anyway, he'd come all the way from Scotland, and he wanted to be a comedian, and he worked as a cinema usher, and he'd saved up his like ushers. Like most of the people just said, "Oh yeah, it cost £100 the course, but worth it." But this man, he'd saved up for like a year to go on this course. And so it was like a real big thing. The stakes were high. This was like saved up all his money to go on this comedy course. And he was really convinced it was going to like launch his career. Anyway, and then it was a bit of a peculiar man. He was a bit socially awkward. He was very tall and sort of lanky and awkward, and would sort of be a bit awkward in that way, but also would sort of say slightly strange sort of things that were a bit homophobic, and other people would sort of say, I don't think you should really say that, and he wouldn't really endear himself to other people in the group. Anyway, on the last day, it was a 3-day course, on the last day, it was time for us to put what we'd learned into action and to go and perform for 5 minutes. no audience, just in front of the other people on the course, sort of thing. And we all got up and did a bit, and then afterwards the tutor would give a few words on it. And some people were quite good, some people not so good, but everyone had some good jokes and some good ideas. And the tutor would say, oh, well, this idea was a good idea, something to build on, that sort of thing. Anyway, just by chance, this man was the last one to go on. And he came on, and there was this great build-up, and he came on like with this weird walking stick, like all strange, in this strange shell suit. And then he got like an egg and smashed it all over the stage, and it was really weird. And then everyone was sort of sitting there thinking, this is obviously going to go somewhere. He's obviously a comedic genius. Where's it going? But then it sort of didn't, and then nothing happened, and then it was just some words, some jokes that didn't work, and then smashing some more things down, chucking some bit of sugar down. Anyway, then he sort of left, and then the man who was running the course literally had nothing to... I mean, there was nothing you could say. It was just a disaster. So he just sort of said, well, we've seen a different type of comedy there. And anyway, that's the end now. And then everyone was talking, all the different people on the course were talking to each other, just saying, oh, yes, you're going to do some open spots in London. Yeah, I'm going to do it. Yeah, it's all like that. Good joke you had there. Maybe just improve that. Oh, yeah, good idea. It's all like that, And then this man, he was just still standing on the stage, all shell-shocked. And then the stage manager of the comedy store said, there's a dustpan and brush. You can clear up that mess and get out of here. And then we were all just chatting, and he was clearing up all the mess whilst weeping. He was weeping. And not only that, we knew he'd been saving up for a year as a cinema usher to go on the course. And his whole dream had been ripped apart. His dream had been destroyed. His life, everything he stood for, his whole soul had been... Oh, I mean, it's moments like that. It's just marvellous. I don't know why. Obviously, a bit of me, I'm not a complete bastard. A bit of me obviously thinks, oh, that's sad, and like feels a bit sad for them. But another bit just thinks, that's so funny.
Oh, God. Ian? Yep. Do you want to ask your first question?
Yes. Little jingle.
Yeah.
So, will you ever retire from the comedy game?
Well, I would retire only if my brain wasn't working properly. And then if my brain wasn't quite right, and I wasn't able to go on the stage, then I think I would do some comedy writing. I might write something, and then at least I could write things that weren't quite right, and then someone could edit it afterwards and say, good idea, but maybe change it.
Yes.
And then if it was really bad, so bad that I couldn't even write anything, then I've got a number of things that are planned for if I have to just totally retire.
Oh, right.
One is to watch League of Gentlemen Series 3, because I've seen the first and second series and I think it's brilliant, but I've never seen the third series.
It's good.
But I know that if I have a successful career in which my brain remains active to the end, I'll never watch it. But then I will know that I've also had a successful career. But I've got the consolation of knowing that if my career's cut short due to my brain not working, then I've got that to look forward to. And other things, for example, the Beethoven's Third Piano Concerto, the slow movement. I'm going to really get into that.
Do you know that, Ian?
Because I find it so interminably dull. The thing about Beethoven, maybe we're going off the point here, Beethoven is a very unusual composer because I think he's the only composer who wrote pieces that I love and wrote pieces that I hate. I literally cannot listen to the Fifth Symphony or the Eighth Symphony. I hate them so much.
Ian's nodding.
But I would listen to those if I were incapacitated and get into them. So that's so other than that, I will never retire. I would never retire from comedy because I love it.
Okay.
And I feel like I'm only just starting. So why would I want to retire?
Yeah. Very good.
You happy with that answer, Ian?
I'm very happy.
Do you want to play your question now? That's nice, isn't it?
So, do you have other hobbies outside of comedy? Do you have things that you like to do?
Well, I mean, comedy is sort of my hobby, really, because it's like I feel like every day is like a bank holiday in which I get up and do my hobby. But I suppose I suppose gardening is like a sort of hobby, so I like to grow things in the garden, and I quite like. But it's really part of work, really. But I like flying to places because that's nice. You can just relax on the aeroplane and drink wine and just put your feet up and don't have to do any emails. And I quite like... there's a number of things that I would like to do if I had time. Like I would love to be an organist, but I've left it too late to be an organist. It's very difficult. And also... I've started a new hobby, but it's like I've started it, but haven't really started it. I've got the ingredients for it. It's pieces of rock and sandpaper, and you sand the rock. It's different levels of sandpaper until it goes really smooth. But I haven't actually had time to start the hobby, but I've got all the equipment necessary for it.
Sounds incredibly meditative.
Yeah. So, and it's actually because another way of doing it, of course, is to put the rock into a rock turner when they actually smooth each other, which is actually a lot more to it than you think, because you've got to get the right size rocks in and stuff. But you can actually do it with a lot of elbow grease. You just smooth it with the sandpaper. But I haven't started, really. I haven't had time. But that would be, I suppose, a hobby, I suppose. I mean, that's... Is sex a hobby? It's not really a hobby, is it? I mean, it's not, but it's not. You couldn't call it a human need. It's not a human need in the way that eating is. I wouldn't call eating a hobby. I like eating, but I mean, I wouldn't call it a hobby. I mean, just because I like it doesn't make it a hobby. I mean, it's still an essential thing to do. I like sleeping. Well, I don't know. Do I like sleeping? I like the effect of having slept. But obviously, I don't like the sleeping itself because. When I'm asleep, I'm dead. I mean, I am effectively dead. I mean, people say, "Oh, is one scared of dying?" But I don't think I'm scared of dying because it'd just be like going to sleep. It's just that you wouldn't wake up. But when I go to sleep, I have no idea whether I'm going to wake up or not. You don't know, do you? So, but I suppose the difference is that you wouldn't have dreams, like. When I'm asleep, I have a lot of dreams, and of course, you only know about the dreams when you're woken up by like a doorbell or something. They're normally quite boring. It's all things like, trying to find a public toilet, and they're all shut, and you can't go, and then you wake up and you need the loo, and you think, oh, that's what all that dream was about. I just need the loo. But I suppose the big difference is that if you were dead, you wouldn't have that dream because you'd have wet yourself. Because that's the first thing you do, isn't it? When you die, you wet yourself.
Do you have any particularly memorable dreams? Anyone that you go, a real corker that stood out?
A real good dream.
Real good one.
Well, I quite often have it's sort of half like a dream and half like a fantasy of like having like a house that I could invent that would have very unusual design. For example, you would have like a spiral staircase going up, but you wouldn't be able to see from the bottom. But as it went round to a certain level, then it would go down again, and then it would come out, and then there would be like you might be in a room, and then in the middle of the room there would be a glass bit with another room within the glass bit, a room within the room. But to get to that room would take like many flights going up and down to get there. So there would be no easy way to get from one to the other, and it would be really fun. The only problem would be if in a fire it would be a death trap because you would not be able to get out. And so I often dream of having such a house as that, and I often dream of I would like to be in a very safe place because I've always fantasized about being totally safe and like being in a room where I can look out but people can't look in at me and I'm totally safe and no one can get in, because I've always been nervous for my whole life of like a a murderer in a beard coming to kill me. I've always had a fear.
Why a beard?
Well, probably shouldn't go into it really, but well, I'll explain. When I was I'll explain. When I was a child, before I was a child, I was in the womb.
Oh, yes.
And before that, my mother and father made a baby. But anyway, their marriage was a shambles, So anyway, then the first memory I have is of my father. My mother said, "You better get rid of that pram. We don't need a pram in the loft anymore." Paul's grown up, he doesn't need a pram anymore. And then suddenly, my father was in the loft, and suddenly his feet came to the ceiling of my bedroom. And he said, "Oh, Christ almighty, you bloody idiot. Now I've got to put my feet to the ceiling. You stupid cow." Anyway, then there was a lot of aggression. And then my father threatened my mother with the scissors. And then my mother ran out to a neighbour. And then I was 5 years old, and then my father sat on my bed and said, "The thing about women is their brains don't work like normal people, and you can't trust them." And I was only 5, so at the age of 5, obviously you just have to say, "Yes, Daddy, of course." But in my mind, I kept thinking, I'm only 5, and this is like one of my first ever thoughts in my whole life, because I'm only 5. But I remember thinking, that is rubbish. What my father is saying is a load of garbage. Anyway, he had a beard, so it made me scared of men with beards, you see. So I was always scared of any man with beard. And also I saw a horror film a few years ago, and it was this lady is like with this man, and he's very dishy and attractive, and they're like on a camping trip, and then it's like, I forgot my toilet bag sort of thing. Oh, I haven't got my razor. And then gradually his beard grows. Oh, yeah, at the beginning of the horror film, you see like a flash forward of like a man with beard trying to murder her. And then his beard grows, and then he's got glasses. He's got a beard and glasses. And then you realise that man's the killer. He's got a beard and glasses. I'd be really scared of that. I'd be scared of any man with beard and glasses to kill me. I would hate to be killed with a man with beard and glasses. Big piggy glasses and beard.
Yes.
Yeah, I wouldn't like it.
No.
So, we're going to stop Paul Foot there to talk about...
Oh, we'll start that
Can
one
you-
again then.
That was good, I thought.
I'm happy to continue.
Don't block the improv, Ian.
Ian interrupted that one.
Yeah. All right, go on, Adam. You were saying.
Me and George were riffing.
Yeah, what were you saying, Adam? Something interesting, I think.
Okay. Ready?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Right. We've stopped Paul Foot there just to take a little brief second. Yes.
Yep.
A little brief second to talk about what we've been up to.
Yeah. Which in
I don't
our
think
case,
either
at
of
the
us.
moment,
I
is
don't think any of us
fuck
have
all.
actually. Yeah, I don't think we've been up to anything.
Yeah. I mean,
no
I
need-
haven't
no
seen
need to
Adam
pause.
since Edinburgh. No, once.
No,
right?
no.
I've got the lead
We've-
in a
we've-
musical.
Yeah. What musical's that?
No,
Revolution, the
Cats.
musical. Oh, Cats.
I haven't.
Fats.
I haven't really done anything.
What?
After this, I've got to go to the shop to buy an onion.
I
That's
thought
probably
you were in the
peak
shops
of what I've been
earlier.
up to.
When we were texting you about an hour ago, you were in the supermarket. Did you forget the
Yeah,
onion?
Yeah, I missed the onion. I missed the
No.
ingredients. I got all the ingredients apart from that. And you can't skimp on the onion.
So you're
Not
gonna
when
go-
you're making a
Adam Willis
stir
skimping
fry.
on the onion.
Right.
No, that's. I have a big question, Adam. Why did you buy an onion?
Okay.
Why are you buying an onion?
What kind of
Because
lasagna are
I've
you
got
making?
to. Because I forgot to add it into my stir fry.
Okay.
So you've paused everything to go out and buy the onion. Why didn't you just make
Yeah,
the stir
I've
fry
put-
without the onion?
Oh, I didn't think of that.
That thought had never entered his mind.
But anyway,
The recipe
Think
says
that clears it up.
tofu.
right, that's a story for another time.
Yes.
Anyway, I think that sort of clears that up. We haven't really been up to anything,
Yeah.
so we might as well carry on with the Unless you've got anything to say.
Well, yeah, of course, yeah, always. The best thing to do to find out what we're up to next is to subscribe to our mailing list. So if you head over to willisandvere.com/contact, I think actually anytime you enter the website, a little pop-up appears, which is quite irritating, but good. So sign up for our mailing list, find out what's going on, follow us on all those social media things, and we will keep you updated with what's going on our end. We don't know at the moment.
Yes, please.
Right. Let's get back on with it then.
Pathetic.
So what is your biggest reason for getting out of bed every morning?
Biggest reason for getting out of bed?
Yes.
Well,
Mentally.
need the toilet, I suppose. No, I mean,
Boring question.
I don't know. I mean, one does just get out of bed because, I mean,
I've got a better question if you want.
well, it's an interesting question, isn't it? Because when one, I mean, it is very dull, our lives, really, isn't it? Like when we're really tired, the only thing we can think of is go to bed, and then you're just drawn to this idea of having to lie down.
Yeah.
And then after you've lied down for quite a long time, then you think, oh, I don't want to lie down. I want to get up. That is life, isn't it? I can't explain that. That is just being alive. I can't explain what it's like being alive. I'm just alive. I mean, when you get up, when you wake up, you sort of think, oh, I've got to go and do alive things now. I mean, and you know, you couldn't run a business or be a comedian just from the bed. It would be tempting to be a first bedbound comedian and to get the audience to... I did do a show a few years ago when it was on a bus and I was in a bed and it was Paul's Bedtime Stories and everyone would join me and I would be in the bed and they'd all join me for a story. And did another one in the Leicester Comedy Festival last year which was called In Bed with a Surprise Comedian. And people all came in, and then I came out from the bedclothes, and it was me under the bed. So yeah, I mean.
And then there was a show.
Then there was a show.
Oh, okay.
I told a story from the bed.
Oh, great.
So yeah, it's a funny sort of place when you think about it. The bed, isn't it, Ian?
Yeah.
It's this place you go when, like, you literally are too tired to carry on, but also it's a place where sex sessions occur. Why would you have the sex sessions in the same place where sleeping occurs? It would make more sense to have a bespoke place for the sex sessions.
Yeah.
And I think something more along the lines of a bouncy castle would be better, like a series of inflatable lilos and maybe some like plastic unicorn horns sticking up in between it, so you'd have different areas demarcated, so you could sort of go from one bit, or you could say, oh, shall we just jump over that unicorn and do that and go into that bit? Why would you want to do the sex thing in a bed thing with two pillows at the end?
I agree.
I mean, it's the wrong environment for it, totally. And why would you want to have a duvet over you while you do it? You know, it's not. It's totally wrong.
Yeah.
What you would need is a carefully climate-controlled area with you know, the right air temperatures being blasted over.
Yeah.
To have the sex session. That's how I would do it, ideally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Like like somewhere all sort of soft, sort of private but soft, and sort of like a field of wheat, a bit like Theresa May running through a field of wheat, but ruder. That's what I would do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Cool.
Yeah.
Play it out, Ian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Paul,
Yes, George.
how often do you perform to an audience that don't know who you are?
Well, none of them know who I am.
Yeah, well, how often in
Well-
this point in your career do you find you're doing a show and people don't really know who you are? Does that happen very often?
Well, when I'm on tour, not very often, unless of course they've come to the wrong show. Now, I did have a thing with I was in Lyme Regis. Anyway, someone had come to see. It was like a tribute band to, I can't remember, it was something Bon Jovi or something like that. Anyway, it was Bon Jovi tribute band. Anyway, they'd got the wrong day, you see.
Right.
The Bon Jovi band was the day after me. And they didn't know that, so they just went to the box office and said, ticket for tonight, please. Anyway, this person went to the show, and in the first half I had Malcolm Head, performance poet, my support act.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, I know all this because he spoke to me afterwards, but when he was watching Malcolm Head, the support act, he sort of thought, it's a strange sort of warm-up for the Bon Jovi tribute band. And there don't seem to be not much in the way of microphones and all the sort of technical stuff you'd expect on stage for a whole band, but, prepared to listen a bit further, enjoyed it. And then when I came on, Iris just came on and was doing all stupid things. And then it was about 15 minutes into my performance that he finally accepted that this wasn't going to be the Bon Jovi. But he said he really enjoyed it and he'd come again next time. So a lot of, so that's another audience member I've built up there. But sometimes I suppose one is in places where not so many people know of my humour.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much. Sometimes, not really that much. Sometimes there's some people who don't know it and some people who do know it. But it's less and less of a problem the longer one does it.
Mm.
How quickly can you tell if you're with an audience and you're like, they're not going to get it? This audience are not going to get it. How soon in do you know?
Well, not very soon, really, because I can sometimes come on. I can sometimes know this is going to be a bit tricky. And sometimes I come on and they're not even really applauding or something. I'm not talking about one of my tour shows, but maybe some other show. Uh-huh. But then I also know that my job is to make them have a good time. So I just keep working and working until they're all enjoying it. And so just because I come on and they're not really applauding, or it seems a bit low energy, it doesn't mean I'm going to give up. So and I just keep fighting and fighting right to the end, even if it's not going well. So I suppose the answer to your question is probably about a minute before the end. If they're not laughing, then I suppose then I would sort of accept that maybe it's not going in the right direction as I'd hoped. But, you never know. The worst gig I ever had was actually, it was in Hereford, and it was 10 years ago. And I came on, and they didn't really go for me, but I thought, oh, this is all right, because I've got all the skills needed I can say things to turn it round. But everything I did just made it worse and worse. And then it turned out, and then they just hated me. And unlike maybe some shows when it doesn't go so well, it was really personal. They really personally hated me. And it was just absolutely ghastly. And it really shook me, and I really thought I could never go back in that room again. But then a few years later, I was doing a show in Hereford, not in that room, but in the big theatre next door. And I did the show in the big theatre, and it all went really well, and it was all great. And then I said to the technician, oh, may I go into that room there? And I didn't even say why I wanted to go in. I just said, can you just take me in? And then, but it was just a room. It wasn't anything. It was nothing. The memory, the sort of traumatic memory was nothing. So anyway, I've gone off the point, but the point is I never give up with any audience. And my job is to entertain the audience and not to it's not to worry about how I feel or what I think. It's for them to be entertained.
Sorry, I was going to ask. In comedy,
yes,
is there any sort of style or aspect of comedy that you haven't tried yet that you think you want to eventually try?
Well, I'm always doing new things, I suppose. I suppose in the last few years, I've been through all sorts. I suppose I did some very strange stuff when I started, and I didn't really even know what I was quite doing. And then 12 years ago, when I started with my new manager, he said maybe think of doing something a bit more like normal observational comedy. and it wasn't normal. Or what I did wasn't normal, but I was attempting something a bit more conventional in that sense. But then I went off sort of into a circuit of doing all sorts of weird things. I did something called madness, which is when I say all strange words that don't make sense but are sort of inexplicably amusing. It goes on for about 3 minutes, and I just say things like, "Cop a load of you with your hetero cream," and stuff like that. And it goes on for about 2 2/3 minutes, and people are laughing, but there's no sense to it. And I did a whole show where I did what I call fantasies. He's just made up stories. When I would just come on, and it was the opposite of what you would normally do. And normally in a show you want to come on and bring the audience with you, kind of get them on side. But I would come on and I'd almost push them away as if I was a complete nutcase and say, "So, a woman has dedicated her life to building up the Cheddar Collection. A collection in a garden shed of every sort of cheddar you could imagine. Mild cheddar, medium cheddar," and it went on like that. And then it was all about this woman with she had growing a cucumbers and a cheddar collection, and it was like a good minute before people sort of laughed, and it was like a real release, like they were really like the tension was sort of because they just thought, is he a nutcase? And then there were all these weird stories, and I literally told a whole hour of weird stories, and then I did another show called Words where. Like a lot of it there was a piece called Rookery Rockery, and it was just me talking about the difference between a rookery and a rockery for about 15 minutes, and saying, of course, the rooks like to go to the rookery, but often they find the rookery's closed and they end up in the rockery. They don't like the rockery as much, and it was all like that about rooks and rockeries. And then and then I did a show called Hovercraft Symphony in Gammon Sharp Major, and the idea was that I had the idea that I would have all these really weird, surreal ideas all pushed together, but all like done in a normal observational way. So I would just come on stage and just say, "Oh, what do you think about the clown buffet?" And it was talking about like a buffet where there's like a dead clown and people are slicing bits of a clown off and stuff. And I'd say, and also, I don't agree with capital punishment. Yes, I know a lot of the unicorns have murdered, but they don't deserve capital punishment. Every time you go to a street corner, there's a unicorn being hanged. Unicorn beheadings are very upsetting. It was all like that. And then, so I did that show, and then in more recent times, I've gone to sort of more conventional, or certainly more conventional clothing to it. And then, but even then, it's not very. I suppose I just end up doing my own thing, really, and it often ends up being quite strange and eccentric, even when I'm not planning it to be. I wrote a piece in my previous show called "'Tis a Pity She's a Piglet," and it was all about school days, and it was quite weird, with loads of really weird lines in it. And then I said to my manager, I said, "Oh yes, I was attempting to create very conventional stand-up comedy about school days." And he said, "Yes, I'm fully aware, Paul, of what you were trying to do." So I suppose now I'm just working on I don't know, but I suppose my main hope is that I make people laugh and I'm not boring. And I should point out that it's very important to me that I make people laugh throughout the whole show. I think sometimes people think that if you do something surreal or a bit weird, that it's going to be sort of vaguely amusing, but I always make sure that I have a high laugh count with people laughing every few seconds. Yeah. Laugh, 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 laugh. 237 laughs per show, I always think, is a good number.
Do you think would you think of yourself as a funny person, a funny performer, or both?
Well, I suppose I'm a funny performer, and people have always found me funny when I come onto the stage. In fact, even in my darkest days at the beginning of my career, when it didn't used to go very well, they'd all laugh at me when I came on. They'd all be on my side, but then maybe I didn't really have the words to back it up. But but I don't. I mean, like I suppose, like most performers, it's massive contradictions. I can be funny off stage and everyone laughing, but I can also be a bit morose or a bit boring like everyone else. And I think, like most things to do with performance, almost everything to do with performance is contradictions. When you go and perform, you care very much about the performance you're giving, but at the same time you don't care. When you perform, you sort of really enjoy it, but at the same time don't enjoy it all at once. When you perform, you're being yourself, but also not being yourself all at once. You're acting, but not acting all at once. Everything is a contradiction. It's probably best not to think about it. It's probably best just to do it. It's one of the reasons I suppose I kept that book with all the gigs in, is it just kept me on doing it. Because it's sort of it's a strange, intangible thing, stand-up comedy. You just have to keep doing it. And certainly with I suppose the comedy I do, there's an element of shambolicness and sort of incompetence to it. But when you start off 20 years ago, there wasn't the knowledge beneath that to make it work. So everyone just thought, this bloke doesn't know what he's doing. Whereas now they sort of think, he doesn't know what he's doing, it's all shambolic, but they sort of know that I do know what I'm doing all at once.
Yeah, there's definitely self-awareness. Ian, can we have your last question, please?
I mean, we could, but we actually only have 5 minutes. So I feel like we should
How do you know that?
Because I've got my phone.
All right, fine. We'll do what Ian says, Pony.
Go
right.
to questions.
Yeah.
The audience.
Does anyone in the audience have a question? If you do, could you put your hand up? Yes, there's a few at the back. Hold on, I'm gonna bring the mic over. I'll do it. You take that. I'll bring you a mic so we can hear you on the podcast.
Paul, as you know, I've been following you over the last 20 years. I mean, 1,822 shows I've been to. Yeah, I've destroyed my career, my family. I mean, all of it has gone to one side to follow you. I just wondered over these years...
Have you really come to shows before?
I just wondered over these years, why your microphone has got larger through the years.
Well, it's not the microphone's got larger, it's just that I've become much, much smaller. So I've been sort of shrinking over the years. Like a raisin. I've been sun-dried.
Slightly shriveled, but more mature.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, it's actually an illusion. It's a bit like when you're in the bath and it looks like all your fingers are shriveled, because it's not the fingers shriveling, it's them all swelling up with the water getting in. I'm like that. I'm like a prune that has been dried out, then rehydrated, then crushed. So that's why I have that sort of very small,
but canned, but not too much in the top of the can.
Yes.
Yeah. In Bognor Regis in December the 29th, I think it was 4 years ago. now.
I did a show in Bognor Regis.
Yes,
It wasn't 4 years ago. It was probably about 10 years ago.
Oh, I think I went to a different show, but I just wondered at that point.
I've only ever done one show in Bognor Regis.
Is it possible I could have my jacket back now?
Oh, did I take your jacket?
Yeah, you've got it on.
Oh, this one?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
That is a special jacket.
Oh, yes, that jacket. Where did you get this jacket?
You stole it from me, if you remember.
What,
I was at the front.
In Bognor Regis?
Yeah.
In December the 29th, 4 years ago. Yeah.
In Bognor Regis.
But the thing is, I know that the thing is, I know you're mucking about there.
No.
And making a joke, but do you really live in Bognor Regis?
I don't know. I travelled specially to see you.
From where?
From Oxfordshire.
To Bognor Regis?
Yeah.
Is this true? Because I've only ever been in Bognor Regis one time.
4 years ago.
And it was about December the 29th. I'd have to look at my book.
Yeah.
But it wasn't 4 years ago. It was about 8 or 10 years ago at least.
But I mean, sometimes memories, can be selective amnesia sometimes when you've done as many shows. And I've seen you as many times. Sometimes times drift.
Where was it in Bognor Regis? What sort of venue
Winter
was
Gardens, I think.
I wasn't in the Winter Gardens. Oh. You're making this up. You're making it up. But it's ironic because I do remember I did do a show in Bognor Regis one time about 10 years ago. But it turns out that you were just making up lies and just happened to coincide with the truth slightly.
Well, I was only mildly embellishing, I think. I don't know if it was a downright lie. But
yeah, well, you weren't there, were you?
Well, I was there, but probably not to see you.
No, yes.
Thank you anyway.
Oh, thank you, yes. That was a good question.
Yeah,
and
brilliant.
It led us
with
into
lies. Right, who's next? We'll go to you and then we'll go to Tom Ward. Earlier in the discussions, you pointed out that a man with a beard and glasses might kill you.
Yeah, yes.
Being a man with beard and glasses, am I that frightening?
Not really, because you've got a walking stick and you won't go very fast. It's the ones who can run fast who scare me. So I'm not scared of you. I'm not scared of you, and I approve of you.
I feel validated, warm, and slightly aroused.
Oh, good.
Lovely. So I think we have time for one more question. Do you want to ask a question? Yes.
Mr. Foot, I wanted to ask you, have you ever regretted anything you've said on stage to an audience or about anything?
Well, yes, I have. There was an interesting one about 3 weeks ago when I was performing in Leeds, I think it was. Anyway, there was some people. It was all going well, the show, but there were some people who perhaps weren't enjoying it so much on the second row or something. Anyway, then they left. 2 of them left. And then I said to the audience, that's good news they've left, because that was, they weren't enjoying it better, and they were all laughing, the audience. And then I just said to the other 2 who were with them, I said, something wrong with them, was there? Because they were so miserable, they really were. This woman in particular was so miserable. Is some issue, was there? Some bad news? And then they said, yes, a funeral today. And then I felt all guilty because, she'd been to this funeral and then maybe she'd come to cheer herself up when I'd said that, So anyway, there's no point sort of getting all, as a performer, you can't just say, oh dear, sorry. So I just sort of went for the jugular and I said, well, I'm sorry if she's been to a funeral, but it's not my fault. I didn't kill them. And then I started saying, we all have death in our lives. And I said, I've got so-and-so who's died and so-and-so in my family's probably going to die soon. I said, we all have death in our lives and it's not my fault. I'm not the harbinger of death, like that. And then the audience all laughed. And then they all at first they were all shocked, oh my God, Paul. And then they were like, all right, we'll go with it. And they all laughed. And then these other 2 people stormed out as well, maybe out of solidarity with the funeral thing. And anyway, and I just said to the audience, I said, we must take no notice of these people. Just because they can't just use death as a cheap trick to try and ruin my show, it's not my fault. If their relatives all drop down dead, that's their problem. Anyway, and then when I came off stage, then I discovered there had been no funeral anyway. It was all made up. And the people had just said it in order to just try and jinx the show. Sometimes people say nasty things that try and ruin it for you. So they sort of said it in a nasty way. It's just been at a funeral. What are you going to do about that? But anyway, it turns out it wasn't even true. There hadn't been a funeral at all. So my regret was not going in harder on them.
Thank you, Mr. Foot.
That seems like an excellent place to end. Can we have a last round of applause, please, for Paul Foot?
I thought quite a momentous podcast.
Why? What's that based on?
Well, I mean, it's Paul Foot, isn't it?
Innit?
That's us punching.
Yeah.
That's us punching. We got Paul Foot in.
2 nights ago, I was watching clips. I'm talking now. 2 nights ago, I was watching clips of Never Mind the Buzzcocks, and one with Paul Foot came on, and it was really funny.
He's funny.
He's hilarious, and
he was
we
doing
got
a little bit.
A comedy legend in his own right.
2 comedy legends
Right.
on stage together.
Ian Coulter.
Anyway,
No.
right. Down to business.
Actually, Tom
If
Ward
you want to
was in the
see Paul
audience.
Foot, which you should, if you want to see Paul Foot, which you should,
Yeah.
he's doing his UK tour.
Innit?
It's already started. He's in Forest Arts Centre, New Milton, on the 27th of September.
Oh, hold on. You're not reading out the whole tour, right?
Sounds like a good place.
I'm not going to read them all, but
Okay, sorry,
basically, go to his website, paulfoot.tv, look at his show diary, and you can find he's going all over the place. He'll be somewhere near you.
He's coming to a town hall near you.
Exactly. You can find him on Twitter at Paulfoot or on Facebook at Paulfoot Comedy.
Yep.
And definitely go and see it.
Yeah, go and see him. His live show's
brilliant
hilarious.
show.
And if you head over to adamwillis.com/live dates, you can see what Adam's up to. I believe he's going to Stoke-on-Trent next week. The week after that, he's in Bermondsey.
Wait, but George, I haven't made a website.
What was
Right.
that? What was that?
Okay.
Chinese person.
Okay. Cool.
Um,
I have no shame.
there was something bitter in there, and I'll find out once we get off the mics. But
Racist.
I think for now.
Marxist.
What?
I thought George said Marxist.
Adam's
I can
being
only
Marxist
slightly
again.
hear you. I'm on the other side of the.
Oh no, you're
I'm
ruining.
not in the room.
You're ruining the illusion, Adam. They
We're
think
doing
that we
this
do
over
this
the phone.
together. No, don't tell them that.
No,
they
we're
think
not.
we're doing this
Well, it's
together.
difficult.
You fucking
Yeah, but it's
wank.
difficult for me to. It's difficult for me to keep up the lie because I
Turd.
can't quite hear you. Right. Anyway, see you in 2 weeks.
Very
Or
nice.
Who have we got on in 2 weeks?
I
Who have
can't
we got
remember.
on?
Some.
All right.
act.
We'll see.
I cannot remember.
Someone good.
It'll
Alright.
either be someone good or it'll be like Robert White. I
Tom
think it's
Ward?
Robert White,
That wasn't Robert White.
who was very funny.
Was very funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. So look forward to that.
Yeah.
And you know what? Just do you. Have a nice fortnight.
Please, for God's sake.
Bye.